Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of a Blue Watercolor demonstration. Today's subject is this wonderful red barn. I particularly like the light and the shadow, especially this main bar casting the shadow on the left side of the building. So I already finished the contour drawing, let's just right on to the painting process. So if you look at my previous demonstration, my process always wet the paper both back and front. The reason doing this to get the initial soft, wonderful soft edges. So as I wetted both the back and the front, I begin to apply to the sky. The sky, I typically use the cerulean blue plus the cobalt blue. As I pre-wet the paper, as you can see, the painting, when they touch the paper, it began to expand a little bit, but I would say it's very controllable. So it's not expanding everywhere, it's in the perimeter of general sky area. I don't mind it extruding the other area a little bit more, but once I apply the other color, it will have this wonderful blend edges, these soft edges, kind of loosely defined. Where's the roof, top of the roof, where's the sky. The color is like all running towards each other and merge together. As you can see from the reference photo, most of the barn is this red color wood siding. So I try to mimic this original mother color. So typically I use a cadmium red. I usually added either a yellow ochre or kind of lavender color to help neutralize it, make it lighter or make it colder. So right now, as I'm doing the left side, I think I add a little bit yellow ochre to make it slightly lighter. I particularly to leave some of the windows for the window trims for later on to explore some architectural details. Same process, I used most cadmium red in the right side of the bar. I try to be a little bit careful to leave the lamp, the light that is mounted on the side of the bar. And then some of the highlights, if the shape is not very difficult, I can cut around. I will do that without sacrificing the good wash. However, as I previously demonstrated and stated, if the cutout area is too small or it is make too much effort to do that, I'll just paint right on top of the area. I can either use in gouache or lift up the paint in the later stage. When everything's still wet, I start to using just a little bit darker color to indicate some of the darker side of shadows. The reason I'm doing now is trying to melt the darker side into the light side. So you have this wonderful transition between the shadow and the light side. I began to paint initial wash of the ground, start from the lighter color and then transition into the darker tones. So basically I'll use a yellow ochre and then added a fraction of more ultramarine blue to make it colder and more start to form this more neutralized color. As I'm doing now, it's more colder towards the bottom of the painting. So that's basically, the initial wash. So as I wet the paper, as you can see, everything right now is a little bit soft edged, as this almost very soft edged painting has finished the initial wash. But that's exactly what I wanted, because I made this wonderful soft background. As the paper start drying and less moisture, I will begin to add the more mid-tone and then later on the dark tones. Right now what I'm doing is I can lift lift up some of the paint to have this light highlight area or highlight zones. You need to do this while everything is still wet, so you can use your brush to lift out the paint. Right now it's a wonderful timing and stage to do the little bit shadow side on the top of the roof, as well as some of the windows. Right now, as the paper is still damp, I can quickly, using almost a dry brush effect, to have to just indicate the siding of the bar. I don't need to do too much illustrated work, but just to get the idea or impression of some of the texture of the wall of the wood siding. I can also splatter water a little bit to make the foreground more interesting and add some textures, and also help the transition between the light and the dark. I added a figure on the bottom right of the painting. The reason being I try to animate the scenes. Before that, it's all architectural and the shadows. I feel like the overall image is good, but a little bit stiff. I want to add a little bit of life. A figure, maybe a working farmer, will be appropriate for this scenery. For the little highlights, I can also use my palette knife to lift out some of the paint as I'm doing now. And I begin to add a little bit fraction of darker, some of the shadows under the wood siding. These individual bits and pieces, right now it looks like a little bit fragmented or isolated, but once I'm done with the shadows, it will instantly tie the painting together. That's part of the reasons why I love this scene so much, is because of the shadows. The shadow forms a big shape and helps to really tie this painting together. I also use a hair blower. Typically, I will not use it for my regular practice. At this stage, especially finish the initial wash between the first and the second wash, I will walk away and let the paper dry for a few seconds before come back. But for this demonstration purpose, I did use a hair blower to give a blast here and there to help accelerate the drying process. I mix quite large of shadow zones. Start with the neutral shadows, and the trick is don't carry everything. I intentionally leave some of the highlights or some of the gaps here and there to give more life to these shadows. You will feel a little bit of air or a light or some of the things, highlights that are extruding or bounce around from the light. In general, the shadows on the wall is more warm tones, more burnt sienna. But I also, if you notice, I also switch the color temperature, start become quite cooler when it's casting towards the ground. That's also a very good way to separate the two planes when the shadow is casting to different planes. I also dropped a little bit of droplet or clean water on the shadow to help better mixing or give it more interesting texture wise. I began to continue the shadow on the right building side. Once the shadow in, you will see instantly the three-dimensionality of the bar, and also you can instantly identify which building is on the front, which building is recessed at the back. I did switch a smaller brush, try to did some careful work on separating the lamp. I try to cut out the shape of the lamp of the light bulb. Another main point when doing the shadow is try to connect the shape, because of the lamp, the casting shadow of the lamp shape have this wonderful 45-degree shadows casting the lamp towards the shadow on the back. So all we need to do is connecting the lamp shadow to the shadow on the left side. So the whole shadow needs to be connected and read as one shape. The reason why doing that is because the simplified forms, the shape will read well and more powerful when you connect to each other. That's also a key point of the impressionistic art. If you squint out your eyes, if you look at my reference photo, you get also a general idea of how everything, the shadows connect all throughout the painting from the right side to the left side. Doing a little more detailed shadow on this barn door, as well as the shadow towards the figure. I give the figure a little bit cowboy hat and a working uniform to make it more believable and fitting into these scenes. But I don't want the figure to be over detailed or bring too much attention because the figure is on the far right. I just want to have you to show something over there to go with the scheme, the sceneries, but I still want your eyes to look at the main focal point with this shadow and the lamp. This barn door, if you recall, I particularly leave some of the highlights. It becomes handy here. Once the dark is in, everything starts to making sense. I start to do a big shadows across the barn door and the inside the barn, try to connect the figure from the shoulder to the legs. So the figure is actually part of is merged into the shadow, and the cowboy hat as well as the right side of the hand is actually inside the light area. In this way, they give a little bit of sense of mysterious feelings. The figure is kind of half in between the light, half in between the shade. This is called a particular design. This will make your paintings more interesting and a story to tell. And also, you will instantly see this foreground, the foregrounds being the figure and the big shadows in the front. I also connect the shadow into the foreground, into the figure. So the big shadow is actually all connected. start to doing a few darks. Right now, the upper portion kind of 6 or 70% is already dry, so it's perfect timing to apply a little bit of dry brush here and there, accentuate some of the highlights of the wood texture or some of the original design, the windows that kind of lost too much or blend too much with the shadow. Right now is a good time to bring it back or make it pops. But the advice I'm giving in this stage is only do this once helping with the focal point or center of interest. Sometimes if I get too carried away, I'll do some of these brush marks on the area that's supposed to be background. Then I need to realize this is getting too much attention. I will often use my finger or the tissues to rub it off. Right now the painting is assuming to the final stage. Just a little bit correction and adjustment on the overall tones, shadows, as well as some correction some of the shapes. Right now, as you can see, the big shape, the shadows are connected, it's already established, so it's easier to bring back some of the bits and pieces. If too much, if this process is reversed, you will not. If you only focus on the bits and pieces, the little details, and then there's no a big shape to connecting the painting together, then this painting will likely to fail. The final stage, I use a gouache to add the highlights here and there, especially around the figure and the lamp. But again, the figure is actually not in my particular center of interest, it's kind of considered secondary. So don't work too much on the figure. Actually, overwork is a very common problem in watercolor. If the subject is overworked, especially in the background, it not only will distract the viewer from looking at the center of interest, but also will make the whole painting lose its freshness. So at that time, if that happens, I always use my tissues to lift out or make it lighter for the excessive brush marks, and just stops fiddling on the subject. Here's a picture of the final finished painting. I actually quite like the result, and finally the painting, it turns out, I think it tells the story and portrays the light and the casting shadow very accurately, and I hope you enjoy this demonstration. Please consider subscribe to my channel, and happy painting. I'll see you next time. Bye.